This morning I am managing with a client the transition from 3 naps to 2 naps, and I thought you might be interested to hear a little bit about that if that is relevant to you right now. We normally see the transition from 3 naps to 2 naps occurring sometime by about 8 months. And of course, don't forget, each child is completely different, so this is a generalization for you to bear in mind. But basically, what begins to happen with the third nap is it sort of retires itself, which means that 1 week your baby is taking that third nap, and the next you may report that they are not. And basically, this transition just indicates your child's readiness to move from the 3 naps to the 2 naps, but to be able to stay awake for longer before bedtime. So this is a maturation. And the dilemma that often occurs is that when there is no third nap, often the second nap is over too early in the day to speak compassionately to a relatively age-appropriate bedtime. And the awake time can often be too long before bedtime. And being awake too long before bedtime can sometimes leave you vulnerable to a resistance to sleep at bedtime and a more frequent awakening post-bedtime through the night, and some long wake periods overnight as well. So we want to try and avoid those dynamics as best as possible. So once the third nap goes rogue, what you firstly might need to do is have a series of earlier bedtimes, and alongside that, begin to move your first and your second nap later in the day. Now, this can be easier said than done, and often your child needs to maybe be an established sleeper, and your daytime sleep may need to be longer than 1 hour on at least one of those naps. And of course, the nap I'm always going to prefer to be longer than an hour would be nap number 2. So essentially, when we move on to 2 naps, firstly, I begin to nudge the first nap, so it begins after 9 o'clock. So in essence, we're beginning to move away from a wake window. Now, I do need to stress that if your child's sleep is a bit unreliable, nighttime sleep is not yet in play, their sleep ability is on the lower end of the scale, making these adjustments can lead to lots of issues. So I suppose if it's a thing, the third nap starts to go missing and you are still vulnerable in lots of other areas, I would begin to work on those areas and then simultaneously begin to make adjustments and changes to where we ultimately want the last 2 naps to be, which is maybe no naps before 9 and no naps before 1:30. And we are looking a lot of the time to acknowledge an awake time of maybe 3 to 4 hours between finishing the last nap and being in bed asleep. But we also don't want to end up with a bedtime that's much earlier than 7 o'clock. So there's a little bit of trickery involved in it and a little bit of adjustment as well. And when I'm making those adjustments, I generally have a series of 6 o'clock bedtimes, a series of 6:30 bedtimes before I get back to in bed asleep, aiming for 7 o'clock or so. I hope that's helpful too, especially if that's what your experience at this moment in time. Let me know in the comments below.